Okay, so A is 1 because it's the coefficient on the x squared. B is 6 because it's the coefficient on the x. And C is 9 because that's your constant. So we'll take those and plug them into the quadratic formula right there. So we have x equals minus b. What is b? 6. Plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is 6 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 9. All of that is over 2 times 1, because it's 2a. So if I were you, I would take this little piece first and simplify it. And so that is negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 36 minus 36, right? 4 times 1 is 4 times 9 is 36. 36 minus 36. What is that? 0. So then that piece goes away. It's negative 6 over 2, which is negative 3. So what that tells you about that parabola, since it's negative 3, 0 is its only solution, because x is negative 3 when the whole thing equals 0. If you were to graph it, at negative 3, 0 would be your vertex, and the parabola would be sitting like that. That's why it only has one solution and not two. Typically, a parabola might look like this, and it has two solutions right where it crosses the x-axis. Or if the rocket ship with the firework was upside down, remember that? This one only has one solution because what was under the radical sign was 0. 36 minus 36. Okay, so what's under the radical sign? Just this part of the quadratic formula, that's called your discriminant. You'll have questions about the discriminant on your ACT. If the discriminant is 0, then you only have one real number solution. And we just saw that. That one solution was negative 3, right? If that is greater than 0, you have two real solutions, and that was the first example we did. It was square root of 33, is that right? Which is a positive number, and we had two solutions. Okay? So, what do you think would happen if the discriminant was negative or less than 0? Now let me write this again. X equals b squared minus b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And what I'm talking about is the discriminant, which is just that piece. If that under the house is negative, what happens? Well, can you take the square root of a negative number?
No.
No, it gives you an error on your calculator, right? So if the discriminant, or what's under the root sign, is negative, there are no real solutions at all. It's going to be an imaginary number. When you take the square root of a negative number, that's what causes you to get i's. You guys remember the imaginary, the I squared is negative 1 from Algebra 1? I hope you do, because that's where we're going next, is we're going to start talking about imaginary numbers. Real numbers are all the ones on the number line, right? If this is positive, you end up with two solutions, just like that one right there. Root 33, we'd have to estimate it. It's some sort of a decimal, right? So it's 1 plus that decimal over 4. There's a spot for that on the number line. Or 1 minus that over 4. There's a spot for that on a number line. And that's the two places where that quadratic model crosses the x-axis. When that discriminant equals 0, you only got one solution. That's negative 3, 0. And so that parabola probably looks like that. Okay, let's do one more. So we have, I'm going to do one off the worksheet that we're going to have today. Actually, I'll probably do two off the worksheet to help you guys out. You only, you got 10. So this is going to be number 1 on the worksheet, which is n squared minus 12n minus 14 equals 0. And we're supposed to solve these using the quadratic formula. If I were you, I would write this every time I worked one of these problems. If you wrote this 10 times, what would you know really well before you got done? We let her in, Kristen. You'll know that quadratic formula if you keep writing it. If you don't write it over and over, guess what? You won't know it. And if you're planning to go to college, you're going to take college algebra. And if you don't know this when you get to college algebra, you're going to suffer. Probably not get a very good grade. Thank you, ma'am. So if I were you, I'd write it for the 10 problems that you're going to do. Quadratic formula right there. How many of y'all are going to college? You're going to need to know this. Your college algebra teacher is going to give you way more than 10 problems. They're mean. I'm a breeze compared to them. I know them. So let's do this one. What is A? And what is B? And what is C? Good job. Now we're going to start plugging those coefficients and constants in. So x equals minus b. Well, b is negative 12, right? Plus or minus the square root of b squared. Can you look at b and tell me what b squared is?
Negative 12.
What's b squared? 144. It turns positive, right? Minus 4 times 1 times negative 14. All of that is over 2 times 1. So let's simplify. So x equals 12 plus or minus. Just look at this one piece right here. 4 times 1 is 4. Times negative 14 is 54. What is 14 times 4? 56. 56. So right there, that under the radical sign is going to turn into 144 minus negative 56, which is the same as plus positive, right? Because that little piece I circled is negative, but you're subtracting it, so that turns into a plus. So what is 144 plus 56? Is it 200? Yeah. You sure, Melissa? I did it in my head. Okay, so that turns into the square root of 200. If you take the square root of 200 on your calculator, do you get a decimal? Try it.
What are we doing?
You do get a decimal? Okay, so this is going to go back to Algebra 1, and I'm just going to look at the square root of 200 because your calculator won't do this for you. So we're going to have a little side lesson. Do you remember what the square root of 2 times the square root of 4 was? Square root of 8. So the square root of 4 times the square root of 4 equaled square root of 16. What does this one really equal? What's the square root of 4? 2 times 2. What's the square root of 16? 4. So it works, right? That's how you can remember how to do that. But now let's go backwards. If we have the square root of, let's just stick with this 16. Actually, I want to do like 32. The square root of 32 equals the square root of 8 times the square root of 4, doesn't it? Right? What is the square root of 4? Okay, so the square root of 32 equals 2 times the square root of 8. Right? But the square root of 8 equals square root of 4 times square root of 2, doesn't it? What is the square root of 4? 2. So really the square root of 32 equals 2 times root 2. What's 2 times 2? Okay, so this is called simplifying the radical. It's where you leave it as a radical, not a decimal. And this is what you do with your quadratic solutions. We never turn them into decimals. So let's go back to what we have, which is the square root of 200. Break 200 up into some factors for me. 2 times what? 100. Is 100 a perfect square? What is the square root of 100? 10. So the square root of 200 is really 10 root 2. Okay? Now your calculator should tell you that if you change a setting on it. Everybody just put in the square root of 200 in your calculator and let's see if so it gives you 14.1421. Alright, it's going to take me a minute to remember this. On your baby calculator, all you have to do is push the switch button. On this one, you have to go to Menu and Settings. Somehow, and you want it to be an exact number, not an estimate. Go home, push the on button with the little house, go down to Settings. I believe it's Document Settings. Calculation mode. Go to Home first. Chloe, go to Home. And you go to Settings. Because you never know what setting your calculator is going to give you when you sit down and take your test.
Yeah, there's approximately.
And is it under calculation mode?
Yeah.
So was yours already set to approximate?
Yeah.
Was it set on auto?
Yeah.
See that real?
Mm-hmm.
Real or complex? Let's change that to rectangular and see what we get. And then the calculation mode, let's put it on,
Approximate.
I think mine was set to approximate. Put it on auto and let's see. You very rarely have to change this because the baby calculators just do it for you. Now let's go back to calculate from the home screen to calculate. And let's try the square root of 200 and see if it gives us, no, mine didn't do it. Did anybody get an answer with the, did anybody get 10 root 2?
You want me to go back and change?
Yeah, go back and change it and let's see if it works. And when all that fails, we go to YouTube.
No.
Go to a new document and a calculator page. I'm going to be working with 1/2. There are several different ways to convert this to a decimal. I will show you the 3 ways that I know. I can go to the menu button, go to number, and convert to a decimal. The other way I can do it is I can hit 1/2 and then hit Control Enter. Control Enter gives me the approximation.
Let's try that. So we're going to try, I keep hitting this. Square root 200 and Control Enter. Let's see if that works. Oh my God. You would not believe all the stuff that's on this screen. Who had this last? Okay. Control.
I got the same thing.
You got the same thing?
Yeah, I just got the
I did too. Okay, and then she said, let's do square root of 200, and then she said go menu, number, and what we want is approximate to fraction, I think, because we don't want the decimal. See if that gives us, no, mine didn't work.
I can also go ahead and do 1 divided by 2, put a decimal either after the 2 or after the 1. When I hit enter, it changes it to a decimal. Now if I want to convert a decimal back to a fraction, what I can do is hit my decimal, 0.5, go to the menu, back to number. If you look right underneath convert
Complex
to a decimal
number
is
tools.
approximate to
I
a
think that's
fraction.
where we're at. Alright, so menu, number. Down at the bottom there's the complex number tool. Convert to polar or convert to rectangular, I think is what we want. Stop it.
It's an error.
Yeah, I've got all that stuff still under my house. Do you? Yeah, I gotta get off that line. Alright. Enter, menu, number, complex number tool, convert to polar. Nope. Menu, number. I hope one of y'all finds this before me. Convert to polar.
Oh, this thingy word.
Hmm.
Hi, this is a tutorial on how to use the TI Inspire CX.
Y'all don't have that calculator, don't get excited. Well, maybe we'll just have to remember how to do it. It may not do it. This calculator may not do it. The little one does, but this big one just doesn't.
Why don't you just use little ones?
Well, I'll just give you a little one. You need a little and a big for this.
Okay.
So we'll do that. And then, I don't know, on the ACT if you'll have both of these or not. So, you get to bring your own calculator, right? The ACT? So put square to 200 in one of these baby ones and see what it gives you.
Who's this for?
The same group? Four people behind me. Got it right now. I know this big old expensive calculator has to deal with that. I have to do home the baby. How many need one back there? Anybody else? They all get in the back? Right. So that one will simplify it for you. And if you ever have a decimal, you can use the switch button on there. All right. Let's work another one.
Wait, so that was it?
Oh, that was number 1. So the correct answer should have been 5 root 2 because it was,
Wait, what?
I can't get it back now. Dang it. What did we end up with? Where did we stop? I can't get that slide back.
Square root of 2.
Say the whole thing to me, Wyatt. It was x equals,
Negative 12 plus or minus square root of 200
over 2. Okay. So when you do the square root of 200, that gives you, is it negative 12? No. 12 plus or minus, is that 10 root 2? Over 2. Okay.
Wait, I thought it was negative 12.
No, it's minus b, and our b was negative 12, so it's minus negative 12.
Okay.
Okay. All right, well, the 2 will cancel out with the 12 and the 10. And so x really equals 6 plus or minus 5 root 2. Because that 2 will go with both of those pieces. All right, so when you have answers presented to you, they're going to look like this. 6 plus 5 root 2 and 6 minus 5 root 2. Good? That was number 1. Let's do number, I know you don't have this sheet in front of you yet, but if you put a number by it when you get the sheet, you'll know it. What? Good? All right, so now we're going to do number 6. It's 6x squared. You want to go ahead and write it down. 6x squared minus 4x plus 8 equals 0. First check, is it in standard form? And yes, it is, because you see that it's equal to 0. So what's your A? B? C? So x equals minus b. What is our b? Plus or minus the square root of b squared is going to be, which is 16. I'm just going to skip a step and put that in there. Minus 4 times 6 times 8. B squared minus 4ac. And our b, no wait, a and c are both positive. We're good. Alrighty. All over 2 times 6. Right? Alright. So this is going to simplify to a 4 out front plus or minus. What does this little piece right here equal?
Negative
What does that even
192.
4, 6, what?
It's 4AC. So if you will look where I wrote A, you'll know that's a 6, and C. It's 4 times A times C. You're just plugging them in.
Negative 192.
Negative 192. When you do the 16 minus?
I didn't do the 16.
Oh, okay. So 24 times 8 is 192. So do the 16 minus that, Wyatt.
Negative 208.
Negative 208. All that's over 12. Put negative 208 square root of that in your calculator. Did it work? No. You can't take the square root of negative 1. Yeah. So now what you need to know is how to deal with a negative discriminant. Not all of our solutions are real. Some of them are imaginary. So here is an important thing. I squared is negative 1. If you will remember that, you'll be able to do these imaginary numbers. I squared is negative 1. So if 3 squared equals 9, right? What's the square root of 9? 3. And it's really a plus or minus, but we're not really concerned about that right now. 4 squared is 16. What's the square root of 16? 4. Well, if I squared is negative 1, what's the square root of negative 1? I. Square root of negative 1 is I. Was that you, Chloe? You little genius. You are. You're awesome. These are the two things you need to remember for these complex numbers, which are difficult, and that's where we're headed. I squared is negative 1, so the square root of negative 1 is I. So let's go back to our problem that we're doing. Is the square root of negative 208 the same thing as the square root of negative 1 times the square root of 208? Yep. What is the square root of negative 1? What's the square root of negative 1? I. So that piece is going to turn into 4 plus or minus I times the square root of 208 all over 12. That negative 1 comes out as an I. Now you can take the square root of that 208. Somebody tell me what that turns into.
4 square root over 13.
It's what?
4 square root over 13.
So it's 4 root 13.
Yeah.
Does everybody see where I put the 4 in relation to the I? You won't put I4, 13. The number's like a coefficient now. I's are kind of like X, Y's, and Z's, and they have a coefficient. So it's 4I13. All right, what happens to the 12 on the denominator? Four over 12 is what? Don't these 4's cancel? Yes? No? Do we remember simplifying fractions? Y'all so confused with the I?
Yeah.
That turns into 1 plus or minus I root 13 over 3. This is hard.
Yeah. Kind of not really.
Let's see. Let's do one more. What about x squared equals 3x minus 1?
What number is this?
It's not 1.
Why you gotta do that?
We're good. Huh?
None.
Because you guys aren't getting it, so you're not going to be able to do this worksheet.
What number is this?
This is not a number.
She
We're not
said
gonna do
she's
it at all.
You will. Probably tomorrow. So how would we apply this one? Subtract 3x and also add 1. So when you get that to standard form, you have x squared minus 3x plus 1 equals 0. Now you're ready for quadratic formula. What's A? B? C. All right. So x equals minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Yes? Let's plug in. Minus b would turn into what out front? Positive 3. What's b squared? 9. 4 times a is 4 times c is still 4, right? Because a and c are just 1. And a is 1, so it won't change the 2 on the bottom. What is 9 minus 4? So it's 3 plus or minus the square root of 5 over 2. That one's easy. So what is the square root of negative 9? Almost. Square root of that negative is not negative. It's the square root of negative 1 times the square root of 9, which is... What's the square root of negative 1? I. What's the square root of 9?
3i.
3i. So tomorrow we'll practice some more with the square roots and negatives with that I so you can do this. Put all those calculators up.